Hi everyone, welcome back and I hope you're doing well. In today's video I'm going to demonstrate some issue that you may or may not face when you are using TASCAM Model 12. And the issue we are looking at is the stereo channels 7, 8 and 9 and 10, and particularly the gain knob. Channels 7, 8, 9 and 10 being stereo channels, one would expect that as you adjust the gain, the balance between the left and the right signal should stay the same and not vary. And in this example, I will demonstrate that that is not the case. Then I will follow up the video with some tips and examples how you can resolve this issue and what TASCAM can do to fix it as well. But first, let's have a look at the issue. I do have a tone generator that's going to be sending a signal out, and I do have the signal coming in analog into channels 7 and 8. And the issue is pretty much the same for 9 and 10, but to save time, we're just going to test 7 and 8. So I've got left and right analog signal coming in to the input, and the switch is set to live input, and that's what we are going to see on the screen. So let's turn on the tone generator, and we are sending a signal of 440 Hz at -6 dB. And we can see on the screen how when the gain knob is at its lowest, of course it's not infinity off because that is a gain knob, so it's giving a gain. So that's why it's never going to be off. And we are getting -33.1 dB for both left and right signals. So let's increase that to about 9 o'clock. And now we have a signal of -17.2 to -17.0 dB. Slight difference there, but remember, these knobs are analog knobs. They're not digital. So that's what you're going to get. And tiny touches of things, it will actually vary it. And that's well within the tolerance of this pod. As you can see now, they're quite equal, -16.4, both left and right. Let's move up until 12 o'clock, so halfway through. And we can actually see we now have -12.4 to -12.5, 0.1 dB of a difference, again, well within the tolerance. Now, these pods are logarithmic pods, they're not linear. So as you move up, the difference will be exponential, and hence the reason the higher you move, there's more likely the chance that the difference between the left and the right resistance for the preamp gain will be different. They do probably have some 2 to 5% tolerance. And that's what we're going to observe. I'm just going to bring the input signal down just a little bit so that we don't clip the input. And let's give it more gain. And now I am about 3 o'clock. Now we have some difference. We can visually see it. We have 19.8 to -20.6. So that's just about a dB difference. Let's move a little bit more. Now we have 17.9 to 19.2. So that's just under 2 dB difference. And even though visually a couple dB is not going to make much difference, like over here we have 2 dB difference, -16.8 to -18.9. But when you are listening to this tone and the difference, 2 dB difference is quite a lot. So that means if you have a piano, that means it's shifted to the left. If you are playing, let's say, a drum machine, you have a kick and a snare, you want it in the middle, now they're no longer in the middle. They are 2 dB shifted to the left. So this is a problem. The reason for this issue is the preamp gain stage that TASCAM Model 12 includes, not the pod. In the manual, we will read that the maximum gain that the line level has is 50 dB, where the mono channels actually have 60 or more dB of gain. So if the preamp had more gain, that means you didn't need to turn this pod all the way up. and still get enough signal. Now, I have tested it with my keyboard and my synthesizers. Even with my keyboard and synthesizer volume close to the maximum level, and it is a line level input signal coming in, I still have to turn this level all the way up here to get a decent signal coming in. Now, this is not a problem if you are recording in your DAW. You can set this level to low and be able to give it a gain or match the gain in your DAW. But it is a problem if you are recording onto your SD card and the signal level is too low compared to the other channels, especially guitars. When you are recording, you get more gain. And when you are doing mixing via the SD card on board without any computer, then your faders for the other channels will be way down and the faders for the channels 7 and 8 will be way up. Typically, you want your faders to hover around the 0 dB mark on the mixer. So you want your faders hovering around -10 to 0 or +5 dB as you are doing mixing. On a funny side note, I believe, from what I have seen so far, that the TASCAM Model 12 was designed and engineered by a guitarist, someone who plays the guitar, because they gave themselves heaps of room and options to plug in as many guitars as they like, up to 6 of them, including other features and instrument input, and enough gain, but not enough for the line level inputs, because they want the keyboard players or the drum machine and whatever to be lower than them. That's one reason, I think. And there's another even more compelling reason why I think the Model 12 was designed by a guitarist, is that in a previous second last update of the firmware, they added Vamp. Now, when I saw that, I said, why would you want a Vamp feature in this live mixer with a tiny screen? In case you don't know what Vamp is, it's basically a looping option. It allows you to loop a certain section with a start point and end point while you're playing from the SD card, and then you can practice your guitar or start riffing, and then once you had enough of practice and riffing that section, you can move on to the next part and then vamp it again. Now, that's a lot of resources in here where I don't believe anybody actually uses it. And I actually did a poll on one of the Facebook groups, and I had some response, and I'll put the response on the screen. And as you can see, some people don't even know what Vamp is or what it exists, and most people who know about it never use it. Because the Model 12, most people purchase it because for live mixing or in the studio or podcasting. And very few play the guitar and use the Vamp feature. That's a fun fact. So what can TASCAM do to solve this issue? And some of the other issues which I'm going to discuss in a moment. Well, they can't go around replacing the pods. There's nothing wrong with the pod. That's how it is. But whether they can go around updating their systematic so that in the future they give more gain for the line level inputs, so that you don't have to keep giving gain and using the pod all the way up to 3/4 way up, so that you get enough gain by just having right in the middle. That's something for the future. Well, one thing they could do is to update the firmware, because they haven't updated firmware for over 2 years now, and I believe it's overdue, and many people I believe that it's overdue. So while they're doing that, is probably remove Vamp feature. That's taking up resources that no one uses. They may be able to keep it in there. I don't know. I'm not a software engineer of that level. But I think what they can do is at least add a feature in there so that you can go select the track and do track normalize. Normalize the levels to -0 dB or -3 dB or -6 dB. Or even allow you to actually set the gain level you want, so that you can say +3 dB, +6 dB, or whatever level you want, or even minus 3 dB, minus 6 dB, so that if you have recorded your guitars too loud, you can bring them down. And that way you can have a better mixing experience with that feature. That is some feature that could be in there. I know a lot of people ask for other features like editing features in here, but personally I think it's too small of a screen to be able to do things like editing, trimming and moving, copying, pasting. I believe it too small of a screen to do it. If you need to edit your tracks, trim, copy, paste, move around, then it's something that you need to deal with in a DAW, on a computer. But if you are purely recording and mixing in here, then gain staging your tracks is probably a great option. And while at it, maybe one other great feature that could add in the TASCAM Model 12 to help people who are computerless, so they're using this as standalone without any computer, allow them to be able to mix and master their songs within Model 12. And to be able to do that is to possibly add a brick wall limiter on the main output. Maybe even a compressor and then a limiter. Because we already have an EQ, which is fine, works really great. But to be able to master your song so that it's loud enough and, it's a sort of joint, all the tracks feel joined together, so glued together, you do need some sort of a general purpose, even a one knob compressor, but digitally in there, as well as a brick wall limiter that you can set a ceiling to and maybe a release time, and you'll be able to master your song. So as you are mixing, you can mix into those compressor or even at least a brick wall limiter as you're mixing it. That way it will help to release songs without any computer, just within Model 12. And since I was talking about firmware update, I believe the Windows driver update is also way overdue, and this will solve a lot of problems and a lot of headaches, especially for people who use the Model 12 as podcast mixer running into OBS. Now, I believe we should be able to update the driver and get Windows Audio to be able to select any of the channels you want to feed into. Whenever you want to go to like the current 1 and 2, that's fine. You should still be able to select 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 8, and 9 and 10. So that way you've got one fader to control the stereo. I know this is possible because my 10-year-old Behringer can actually do that. I'm able to select whichever audio output I want for my Windows media to play into, and at the same time while I have my DAW open. So I could actually have the sound from my speakers coming not only from my DAW, but also coming from my Windows media simultaneously. Yes, it's possible. And I'm sure TASCAM is smart enough to be able to do that. If Behringer can do it, not that anything wrong with Behringer, if Behringer can do it 10 years ago, I'm sure TASCAM can do it in 2023. So please, TASCAM, from your loyal customers who love your product, please do support. I believe it's way overdue for firmware update with those few additions in there, as well as the Windows driver update. I'm aware this is not an issue on Mac platform because you can use Core Audio to redirect your audio to whichever of the channels you want. Why can't we have that in Windows? Please, TASCAM, please update the drivers and the firmware with those new features that everybody needs and wants and expects. If this video was helpful, now you know the issue with the channel 7, 8, 9 and 10 gain staging. Please give me the thumbs up if it was helpful. Make sure you share this video as well, especially with people from TASCAM, so they are aware of these issues that we have, and now they can understand, and hopefully they'll be able to fix those issues for us in the future. Till next time, as always, thanks for watching and have a great time making music, and I'll catch you in the next one.